And I think there's one or two new people to the classes. Maybe I just have a shortened memory, mild dementia or something like that. I don't know. But if there's someone who's new to the class, if you would unmute and just kind of share how you found out about the classes and what you might like to get out of them, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I'm Marcia Berland. I live in Nighthart, Montana, and I heard about the class. I was in Michelle Visick's class, and gosh, what was her name? There was this girl, and she mentioned this group, and I thought, oh, I'd love to join. I live in a small town of about 40 people. Nobody here eats whole food, plant-based, but they all love to talk about how sick they are. It's amazing.
That's
And
really good.
I'm on no medication. My doctor, who has Parkinson's, doesn't want to hear about whole foods, but she says I'm a poster child. I love it. I love it.
Wow, that's
Beth
wonderful.
Lucy, she told me about this.
Lucy?
Beth Lucy, Moosey?
Oh,
yeah.
Beth Mucci. She is back on the East Coast, actually.
Well, I'm up north.
Yeah, and Beth is here actually tonight. So, Beth, thank you for referring Marcia. And Marcia, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. And so, are you doing a whole food, plant-based lifestyle right now, even though no one else in your community is doing this?
They think I'm an oddball. I don't care. They're the ones that have lupus and MS, and they have heart disease, they have diabetes too, and they have hemochromatosis, and they have all these different diseases, high blood pressure. And I give them a book to read. Oh, they just don't have the time to read it. And I have a big library of books from Fiberfield to Dr. Bernard's books to Dr. John McDougall. I mean, I have all these books and I love them.
You'll be teaching these classes for us here one day.
No, I don't think so.
I love it. Anyway, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. And again, thanks, Beth.
Yeah, it was great. Marcia and I just barely met last week through Chef AJ's group.
Oh.
I don't know if she mentioned that I was late coming on, but so yeah, so I'm still getting to know Marcia, but it was just we were put in the same chat room together through Chef AJ, and so isn't that cool?
It's very cool. We're very thrilled. You know, the middle of the country, Montana, north middle maybe. Back to your state, is it New Jersey or?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. You know, the new this, the new that, you know, it's hard for me to get all straight. But New Hampshire and then Oregon, we've got from coast to coast and in the middle now. So we're thrilled. Who else might be new? Who might have heard about this class from someone else or what you might expect to get from it?
We're new. I'm Danielle Warren, and this is my mom, Kathy Warren. And she found out about the class from her doctor. And so we're new tonight. Yeah, we don't really know what to expect.
Well, welcome. We're also thrilled to have you and try to stick with a couple of these sessions. You know, each session is a bit different. The message you're going to hear is pretty much a similar one, but the science is going to be a bit different. Tonight was more of a review kind of session, but we're going to be talking about high blood pressure tonight. And you can learn from tonight what might help high blood pressure, can also help diabetes, heart trouble, kidney disease, and so many other chronic illnesses, overweight. So the messages you're hearing if you learn how to treat one, you'll learn how to treat all the rest of these chronic illnesses.
And I will go over the website real quick at some point here before we get started, just to announce a couple of things, and that'd be good for the new people to kind of see the website to get a review.
Perfect.
I
Yeah,
have a quick,
so it
oh.
seems like we might have one other new person here.
Hmm?
So is it Shelly E? Maybe, yeah, there you go.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Shelly.
Hi, guys and gals.
Okay.
Nice to meet you all. This is my first time here, and I did hear about this class. Well, actually, I saw a flyer at my doctor's office, and I had a back injury last fall, and I had surgery in recovery, and had to take a lot of meds, gained weight, losing weight, and I have been a kind of fairly committed on again, off again vegan / vegetarian for many years with some momentary lapses. So excited about nutrition as part of health, as my life, as part of my lifestyle.
Well, glad to have you, and welcome, and also welcome Danielle and company. I can't remember the other name. Yeah, but we're really happy to have you. And is there any other new person here that may want to say hello? I see someone, Roberta is connecting audio. But I don't know if Roberta's new or not. Okay, so since we have several new members, I want to introduce myself. I'm Charlie Ross. I've been a physician for 45 years in Oregon, and I used to be the SAD doctor, standard American doctor, pushing a lot of pills, till Sanjay Gupta came along and changed my life. Pointed the direction of a whole food plant-based diet, which I chose to change what I was eating for my wife's sake. It's been 10 years and she has no evidence of heart disease, although she had a strong family history of heart trouble. So that's why I do what I'm doing. And then Scott Wagner, you can introduce yourself, and then maybe Lisa can say hello.
Sure. Hi, I'm Scott Wagner. I'm a physician assistant at Oregon Medical Group and working in internal medicine. I've been a PA for 17 years, and I've been doing this for it'll be 10 years in December. So Charlie's a year ahead of me, so he's almost to 11 years now. And so I did it I studied nutrition when I was having health problems despite heavy exercise, and so got myself healthy, and then I started applying it to my patients, and the rest is history. And I'll point you to the website. Those that are new, I'll point you to the class website, and you can get the full story of the introduction of my story and Charlie's story that are on classes that are already recorded on the website. So we won't give you the long versions here tonight. So welcome.
Okay, so before Scott goes off to the website and gives you a quick introduction so you can kind of log in and see what's been happening and get a lot of your questions answered. Some of you may just need some extra help. We have a medical student who's been following along with us for over a year, and she can introduce herself. It's Lisa. Check.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa. I've been a doctor for -2 or 3 years because I'm in my second year of medical school, and I have been connected with Dr. Ross through my school and have been coming to the classes here, which has helped me learn a lot, and I know it'll help you too. But if you find yourself finding some things confusing or you're struggling with motivation, I've been working with some of the students here one-on-one and it's been a lot of fun for me. The cost is nothing, and it's just really great experience for myself. So I will put my information in the chat. And then another participant in the class and I started a Facebook group too. So if you're interested in that, you can join there, and we just share questions, recipes, motivation. It's a fun place to get to know everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. She's been quite a benefit to a number of people who've appreciated her one-on-one counseling and been able to keep them on track and help them overcome some of the barriers as they're transitioning to healthier lifestyle choices. Scott, you can take it away, I think, at this point,
Sure.
to take us to the website, how we get there easily, and
Yeah, great. So it's on the class flyer. Those of you who have the class flyer, you can get access to the website. And let me add this here. It's just www.livelifestylemedicine.com. So here's the home page. So I won't go over too much of what's on the website, because if you just go to the home page, you can scroll down here and there's a website tutorial. So it's about 10 minutes long. You just click it and I take you through a nice 10-minute tour of what's all available on the website. So I won't do that here now, because you can just do that when you get a chance. And then here's the links to the Facebook group that Lisa was talking about if you want to join a Facebook group. If you're not on the weekly class newsletter, you can click here and subscribe. Also, you can click here also to subscribe. It's just a weekly newsletter that has information about the classes and other information to keep you up to date on things, and just a good reminder of what you're trying to make these changes. And it's a lot of times patients will tell me, yeah, it's just good to get that reminder of why I'm doing this, and kind of help me keep on track to get that. But the thing I wanted to mention mainly was some of the new things coming up. So I know some of you aren't from Eugene Springfield area, but we also have another group, the Eugene Plant-Based Providers. And this is a link to the website for the Eugene Plant-Based Providers. And we're starting to do a lot of community events. So now that COVID is kind of getting better as far as getting back to normal things, we're trying to start doing more things in person, since we are still doing these classes. Charlie and I used to do classes individually live in the community for a number of years, and then when COVID hit, we switched to this online format, which works really well for as far as sharing everything. But we miss out on the personal touch, and getting together and whatnot. So that's why this group, Eugene Plant-Based Providers, we're trying to do some community events. And so I'll take you to a link to that website real quick, just so you can see some of the things that are coming up. If you go to upcoming events here on the top, click on that. I just wanted to show you some things that are coming up. The walk. So this is our first community event. So the Eugene Plant-Based Providers Community Walk, which is coming up this coming Saturday at 2 o'clock at Skinner Butte Park, just the parking lot just west of the Campbell Community Center. So welcome you to come to that if you're interested. And then just got added in the last week. Two members of our Eugene Plant-Based Providers Group are dietitians at McKenzie-Willamette Hospital, and they are leading these grocery store tours. And so on Wednesday, June 8th at 6 o'clock at the Safeway on Coburg Road, we're going to meet there. And it's limited to the first 20 people that sign up. So if you want to sign up, just put your name and email here and click send. There's a second date available the same week on Saturday, June 11th at the Winco over there off Mohawk in Springfield, and at 10 o'clock in the morning. So same kind of thing. So you can choose whichever one works better for you, and feel free to take advantage of that. It's free. And then this also just got added. We just had Charlie and I and Eric Colgrove. He's also part of this group, and both with the classes and with the Eugene Plant-Based Providers. We just had a meeting. We have a meeting every month, and to organize these events and things. And we also had a JJ, who's the head of Eugene Veggies, which is another group in this area. and she always has a summer picnic, and we decided to join forces with the Eugene Veggies group. And this is when we're going to have it, Sunday on Sunday, June 26th. It doesn't say it's going to be at 6 o'clock. Sean, who does this website, will need to add the time, but it's going to be at 6 o'clock on Sunday, June 26th at Day Island Park in Springfield. And you need to RSVP if you're going to come, and you can click that here, and then you can click here for more event details. And I'll include this stuff in the newsletter as we get more information. I have it in the newsletter. I'll have it in the newsletter for this next week as well. So I just wanted to give you those quick things. The rest of the website information and stuff, you can, as I mentioned, you can go out to the homepage of the class website and see what's all available on there for those of you that are new. So I encourage you to do that. But I just wanted to share that so you see exciting things that we got coming up. That's it.
And Scott,
Yeah.
did you mention that all the recordings from the past 2 years are on there?
Yeah, on the website. So when you watch the 10-minute tutorial of the website, I go through all of that, all the class recordings that are there, all the cookbooks and recipes and videos and all the other educational materials. You'll get a good review of that if you watch the tutorial on the homepage of the Live Lifestyle Medicine website.
Yeah, I find that very helpful because, you know, I'm not always awake at 10 p.m. my time. So I do find it very helpful to go listen to those.
Great.
And it took me a while to understand that there's like the classes and then there's like the discussions about the classes. I didn't really understand that, but now I do.
Oh yeah, so we try to have, Charlie and I did a survey. We had a survey last year, and so we kind of had a combination of what we called the core curriculum classes with specific topics, more of a formal presentation, like PowerPoint presentation showing videos and things like that. And then we would have some classes where we would just kind of like tonight, where we would just kind of rehash things and kind of just answer questions and get into discussions. And what we found from the survey that we sent out late last year is that people liked a combination. More people liked the formal presentations, but there were a fair amount of people that liked the classes like tonight as well. So we figured we would kind of do a hybrid this year in 2022, where we do 2 or 3 formal classes, and then we throw in one of these more informal open forum discussions, and just to kind of then kind of give something for everybody to, so kind of appease both parties.
Okay, so does anybody have any things that they would like to quiz about or anything on your mind?
I'll start it off.
Okay, Sherry.
Last week, when we were looking at, ideas to lower high blood pressure, etc., and I took notes, and one thing that really surprised me was rice and fruit. That kind of brought me to a dead halt, if you will, because rice is is loaded with carbohydrates, right? And so I thought, okay, fruit I got, but mixing it with rice, that kind of shocked me.
Yeah, do you want me to take that?
Yeah,
Charlie?
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so what you're referring to is the Walter Kempner diet, which was called the rice diet, and it was really not a very healthy diet, really, because it was just white rice, fruits, some sugar. It was actually really refined, a lot of refined products, but it was kind of what the theory was behind it was. It was really extreme, and it was for people with really serious, what was called malignant hypertension, this was during a time, this was back in the 1940s, and this was during a time when there were no blood pressure medications. So people were dying from this malignant hypertension, really high blood pressure, like 240 over 120. I mean, like these people were going to stroke out. And so they would go to, and this is at Duke University, Walter Kempner, and it was called the rice diet. And so, yeah, it's not a very healthy diet, but kind of the point behind it was so restrictive, low in salt, low in fat, that it would essentially kind of open up, relax the arteries, and release some of the fluid from the typical high salt diet. And so it's just kind of a testament to what could be done with a diet, with an extreme diet change, to lower blood pressure and reverse like the retinopathy in the eye. And they had all this evidence, and so it was really impressive. But yeah, what to build on that is, we don't think you should just be eating white rice and sugar and fruit all the time, because we have a lot more nutritional science now. We would say, okay, yeah, eat some brown rice and eat fruit and eat whole grains and eat beans and eat all the other fruits and vegetables, and that you'll get the same benefit from that rice diet to lower blood pressure, but then you can also improve your health overall. So it's not that we shouldn't just be eating the rice diet, because we can do much better. But that's a great point. Anything you want to add, Charlie?
Yeah, I'd like to add just a little bit to that, Sherry. And you mentioned that it's carbohydrate. And I know that carbohydrates have been given a bad rap. I know that most of you have been counseled to stay away from carbohydrates, but actually carbohydrates are not a single class. There's the complex carbohydrates, the ones that are connected with fiber, and there are the carbohydrates that are simple sugars, the refined carbohydrates. The refined carbohydrates are the white sugar and the white flours. And, those are not the healthiest choices, because they lead to inflammation. So by rights, yes, when someone says stay away from carbohydrates, what they're talking about are these refined carbohydrates. They're not talking about the complex carbohydrates, but this message has gotten confused, because potatoes are starch and carbohydrate, but they are in the whole potato is, just loaded with fiber, and it has molecules, which are sugar molecules, but that fiber kind of hangs on to the sugar, doesn't allow it to be absorbed as rapidly and cause the inflammatory changes. That's simple carbohydrates. So I hope you don't continue on with the myth that all carbohydrates are bad for you, because if you do, you're going to come to the conclusion that the only thing that you can eat that's healthy is protein or fat. And what is protein and fat? It's pretty much most all animal products. You're going to wind up eating those. You're going to wind up with not the best health, as it turns out. If you stick with the classes long enough and you keep listening, you'll learn that eating whole plant foods as they're grown in nature, even though they have a lot of carbohydrate, they're complex carbohydrate, and that we should not be bad-mouthing carbohydrates in our minds any longer.
True.
That's
What about whole wheat bread?
so my answer to that is, we all love bread. None of us want to say we don't want to eat bread anymore, but some of us are not getting the benefits we want when we make a transition to a whole food plant-based diet. And if we're still have blood sugars are out of control, if we still have high blood pressure, if we're not unclogging our arteries, then eating bread is a processed food. So, it's a choice that you get to make. I'm not going to tell anybody you cannot eat bread. My response would be, you can eat what you want, but if you're eating bread and you're not getting the health benefits you want, my advice is to substitute a food that is actually grown in nature, a plant food, instead of eating that bread. This is your personal choice. And for me, I choose to avoid bread. Now, does that mean I've never had a piece of bread in the last 9 years? Well, it means I may have had bread a couple times a year at some event or whatever it might be. I don't eat it very often, but there are those times I'll eat cracker or bread only because, you know, I want a little peanut butter on it or something. But I know it's not the healthiest choice for me. So I try to stick with whole foods as they're grown in nature. And I encourage most people to try to do that as much as possible. Unless you are totally healthy, getting all the benefits you want in life and you're happy. Go ahead, Jerry.
Dr. Oz had a experiment one time, and they did blood testing before and after and all that. And they had these women eat 2 slices of toast, and the other group ate Milky Ways, 2 Milky Way candy bars. And the bread spiked them more than the candy bars.
It's the refined carbohydrate in the bread.
I couldn't believe it, more than the candy bars.
Probably because some of the fat slowed the absorption a little bit. So the bread probably absorbed faster than the candy bar, because the candy bar has, you know, has some other things in it, fat and sugar, and then also the butter and some of the other things. So it might have slowed the absorption a little bit. But that's not very scientific, but doesn't mean the whole wheat bread would still be a better choice than a Milky Way candy bar. So it's you have to kind of take it, you know, it's relative, right? And so this is a good example of, you know, when people are asking about, someone put in the chat, a carb is what they heard. It's like, this is where that class I had about nutritional myths and other popular diets, you have to fall back to that. So what's really important about nutrition? Not, you know, how many carbs you eat or how much protein or how much fat you eat. What's the food that you're eating? The food packages. So the food-based nutrition is far more important than nutrient-based nutrition. So we shouldn't make food choices based on how much carbs or fat or protein it has in it. We should be choosing the most healthy packages of food that we can get. So we want to, and those choices should be mostly whole plant foods. So that's the theme there. We'll always come back to that all the time. It's every chance we get.
There was another hand, Mary.
Hey, I was just thinking that I had a conversation with a friend of mine last week, and he had just come from a diabetic counselor. His A1C is 5.7, and I would pay you right now if you could give me that. But he was telling me about his visit with his diabetic counselor, and I think it's no wonder people are dying from diabetes if they're going to diabetic counselors, because he walked away with the same carb thing, you know, that he shouldn't eat any carbs. And I literally gave him Mastering Diabetes. I gave him the whole book. I mean, wow. I have known since I was 16, and I said, listen, these aren't the people to listen to. You know, this is the Bible. Read this Bible. And I think that the danger, second thought, the danger of Dr. Oz and his show is that he does this study between Milky Ways and bread and says that the bread is worse, and I'm willing to bet most of his audience started eating Milky Ways.
Yeah. Good point.
Or even bread, you know. So anyway, just saying that even the diabetic counselors really don't understand how diabetes works or what will trigger a blood sugar spike. Sad. It's kind of sad to me.
Yeah. So I want to add to that. There are a number of whole food, plant-based registered dietitians who do understand. There's Sean, there's Karen, McKinsey-Willamette, there's,
Thomas
Bosch in Eugene.
Oh, yeah.
They are totally on board and really have an understanding, which is 3 more than there were 5 years ago.
I forgot, I know Thomas well. I'll pass on Thomas's name to him.
That'd be
Do.
great.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. Anybody else?
I just have, this is Debbie, just on my phone, and I just have something to add, Mary. I'm a certified diabetes educator and a nurse, and within the Association of Diabetes Educators, there's actually a specialty group of plant-based providers. So it's pretty exciting, you know, that it is happening, sometimes slowly, but yeah.
That's great. Thanks for saying that, hearing that.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Anyone have any other questions even related to high blood pressure and heart disease? Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
So we were talking a lot about blood pressure numbers last week. And, you know, we all know that diastolic is probably more important than the other one, systolic. And so here's my situation. I have really good diastolic or lower numbers all the time. I average like 70, but my systolic isn't that impressive. My average is 140, and this is over about a year of keeping track. So any ideas on why I'm kind of backwards from most people, and anything I can do to lower systolic, the top number?
Are you on any blood pressure medication?
Yeah, I'm trying to get off, but until we get this solved, I think we're staying on it. And we being my doctor, my principal primary care provider suggestions. But I'm anxious to get off. And with these low bottom numbers, man, I've got to be close. But we got to get the higher numbers out of the way. So yeah, I'm taking, let's see, it's lisinopril.
That's it?
I'm anxious to get off. Yes. And then with this diet, I don't eat, you know, I really watch the salt. I try to follow Dr. Ross's suggested factor. It's practically impossible, but I try. I mean, there's so many things that are 15 calories and 300 milligrams of salt. So that's a real hard factor to use, but a ratio to use, but I try.
Well, all we could say is to, get rid of, to just do the best you can with the diet. So whole food, plant-based diet, avoiding all processed foods and things because those are what's going to have the most salt in it. So if I my guess is if I locked you up in a 5-star hotel for a month and fed you nothing but sweet potatoes and broccoli, you'd be off the blood pressure medication. But that's pretty restrictive, right? And so you have to try to figure out how many more changes can you make to try to get that blood pressure down and get off the medication.
Don't have any more magic than that to lower the upper number.
Adding the things like we talked about last week, adding the beets and the flax meal and lots of dark leafy greens to get all those nitrates in there. And I mean, just all the things we talked about last week, try to do all those things. That's the best chance you got.
Avoiding the oils and fats
And the
in your
oils,
diet.
right.
You know, the oils and fats constrict your arteries, the dark green leafies. If you want to follow Dr. Esselstyn's suggestion, take a handful of dark green leafies 6 times a day and add it to your meals.
I eat tons of dark green leafies.
Okay.
First
How
thing in
about
the morning.
oils? Are you adding oils to your diet?
Well, they're hard to avoid, but no, I don't eat French fries.
Well, what's hard to avoid? Which foods are you eating that have the oils in them?
Right now, I'm experimenting with, you're not going to say it's the best choice, but it's a total choice. I'm experimenting with veggie burgers, not the Impossible Burger, but like Morningstar Farms, vegetable-based burgers. So they're really good, and they're totally vegetable, but there's oil in there. So I guess
So the question is how important is it for you to get off of the medicine? If it's really become such a goal, then you may say, maybe I'm going to try for a month, not just eating foods as they're grown in nature, that they have not been processed whatsoever. I just listened to Dr. John McDougall this last Sunday, who was talking about high blood pressure with Dr. Clapper. And if you make a donation of $10 to Clapper's site, you could listen to John McDougall say that with a blood pressure of 140/70, he would not go lower than that, because when you start getting lower than that, when you're on medicine, when you're taking medicine, your body tends to try to adjust and raise the pressure up. And he's at times taken people off of their medication at 140/70, what you have, and their blood pressure comes down because it's no longer trying to compensate for the effects of the medicine. This would be
whose site do I go to look at that?
Well, it's probably on John McDougall's site, but it was Dr. Clapper who had him as a guest speaker. And so Dr. Clapper's site is Moving Medicine Forward. And then Dr. John McDougall is the one that I would look about how to treat high blood pressure and review his information. And you will find that, you need to be careful not to lower your blood pressure too much, because there is an increased risk of lesser life expectancy by lowering it too much with drugs. So just a thought, Ken.
I'll have to watch it, pay the $10, because it sounds exactly what I need to hear.
Okay, I think you'll enjoy listening to it. Anybody else?
Left to my own devices, I want to talk about nitrites and nitrates because I see a real paradox.
Okay.
So I've learned how to, in New Zealand, they like meat. And I learned how to do a lot of things there. I learned how to corn beef. And we were just pumping the sodium nitrite in there like mad in the brisket. Man, I'd never eat corned beef. It's just, but anyway, so what I'm getting at is the processed meats, the bacon, the ham, the smoked roast beef, the hash, everything corned beef. It's got a lot of nitrites and nitrates. And so I think it's a paradox. You're telling us we need some of those to be healthy, but those things are just low. I mean, they might as well be salt. I feel like I'm eating salt when I eat that stuff, but I don't eat that stuff. But when I did, it was pretty salty. So, you know what I'm asking? Like,
yeah, we do.
If we're supposed to have nitrates and nitrites, why can't we eat processed meats?
They're handled differently in the body. I don't remember all the science. How about you, Scott?
Well, nitrate, we're talking about nitric oxide, which is different than, it's not the same thing. It's not a preservative. Nitric oxide is a gas made by the endothelial cells of your arteries. So that's the nitric oxide pool comes from there. But then I know I have to review the chemistry, but it's basically the nitrates in the dark leafy greens go down into your stomach, get reduced, and then get reabsorbed to go back into your saliva. And then there's little bacteria in the crypts of your tongue that change the nitrate into nitric oxide, and then that dilates the blood vessels and reduces your risk for heart disease, all those things. So what Ken's talking about is a completely different molecule. It's not the same thing.
There's actually, if you go to nutritionfacts.org and do a search for nitrites or nitrates, I'm just doing it right now. It says the video you want to watch or the blog is "You Say Nitrates, I Say Nitrites." It turns out there are good nitrates and bad nitrates, and the body handles those differently from animal-based versus plant-based foods. So go to that, watch that video or read the blog. Got it?
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Yeah, it's a podcast, which is 15 minutes long. And Dr. Greger goes into detail. He'll answer your question. And it's an excellent question. And it was confusing to me as of a couple of years ago until I listened to this, or a year ago.
So the leafy greens and the body changed nitrous oxide to, what was the next one?
They changed the nitrates or nitrates into nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide is your friend. That's what you want.
That's the one that dilates your arteries, improves blood flow to your brain, to your heart, to your kidneys, your lungs, everywhere. Are we having fun yet? Okay. Lead on. I have it blocked, so I can't remember quite the name, but you have your hand up, and let's see, where is?
It's
That's
Dorothea.
it. Dorothea, yeah. Sorry, Dorothea. Go ahead.
That's okay. I have some issues that are making it difficult for me to find foods to eat. I get migraines a lot, and so I can't eat butters or nuts, nut butters, and several different kinds of foods. And also I have kidney disease and had a kidney stone. So that just like really brings, just makes it really harder for me to find foods that work. So I'm wondering if maybe you could suggest somebody that I could talk to get this all figured out.
Yeah, so I would suggest you give Lisa Chick a call and let her try to figure out how to treat someone with kidney disease, how to reverse that. And that would be a lower protein diet, which would mean a whole food plant-based diet. It
Right,
would
yeah.
mean you're worried about oxalates for the kidney stones, perhaps, and
Yes.
you will find that a certain amount of oxalates are okay, that you don't have to restrict every oxalate in the world, but there are a number of different greens that have very little oxalates in comparison to others, so you need to just focus your attention on incorporating those into your diet. And you will find plenty of foods that you can eat. And not eating the nut butters is, you're going to live just fine with not being able to eat those things. There were plenty of other foods for you to eat. But I'd encourage you to discuss this with someone one-on-one to get your best advice.
And then if you're also trying to just, in general, figure out how to get started on planning meals for a whole food plant-based diet, make sure you go back to the class back in January that was meal planning. So the meal planning class, and then we go over lots of different, I go over on the website too, where there's all kinds of websites with recipes and meal plans that you can look at, and just that class in general, we talked a lot about that. So if you're just kind of wanting to get started, watch the introduction classes, watch the meal planning class from back in January. Dr. Greg also has some videos on nutrition facts about migraines. So you can look up, just do a search on nutritionfacts.org and type in migraines, and he has some videos with that. So he'll go over some foods that seem to help with migraines, and there's some foods that seem to trigger migraines. And then also they can also do a search, also looking at kidney stones, and you can get some specific information from there as well, besides counsel or one-on-one with Lisa.
Now, Jean had asked about vitamin B12, that it says to take it daily, but Scott said to take it once a week. And the once a week, for those who are under age 65, taking 2,000, Gregor's recommendation was 2,500 at one point, and I think he's revised that to 2,000 micrograms once a week. So even though the bottle says take it every day, you can take 2,500 or 2,000 micrograms once a week if you're under age 65. If you're over age 65, like yours truly, then you take 1,000 micrograms every day is what Gregor recommends. Anybody else? I hear a microphone on. Excuse me. Must have been from the COVID vaccine booster I got today.
You got one today, huh?
I did. Plus I played tennis afterward. And it's been fine. They use the
Lucky.
They used the smallest needle, like a 30 gauge needle. So I didn't feel anything. It was totally unbelievable. So I'm excited to have that done with.
Yes, Charlie, I had a question.
Go for it.
If I may. Thank you. I have what's called white coat syndrome. So
Yes.
if I get near a doctor's building or go into a doctor's office, my blood pressure is quite high. This began in childhood when a doctor yelled at me terribly, and I've never forgotten it. And every doctor scares me. And I don't notice it now as much as when I was much younger. I'll be 77 soon. But my blood pressure still goes up. And I think it's true that even when we talk, our blood pressure goes up. If we're angry, it really shoots up. I've read about people having heart attacks in meetings when they get upset. And so that's why it's so important to keep this under control. And I thought if anyone else in this forum had a problem with what I have, I bought a cuff monitor by Omron that they used on me at OMG, because even the cuff on your arm hurts so badly because I have fibromyalgia that I can't, that really is very painful. So my blood pressure shoots up. So the cuff monitor really helps. And I check it at OMG once a year when I go in for a physical to make sure my monitor is in tune with what they're finding in their office. So that helps. But I won't tell you what my blood, I take it 3 or 4 times during this forum on Tuesday nights because they used to upset me so much. And my blood pressure now is back down to normal. I'm used to what I'm hearing, and it's working. I have some issues, and of course, as you know, in the home, my husband's not in agreement, but he's been supportive. But I just, so it's true that when we talk, our blood pressure goes up. Is that true? Because I notice that when I'm talking and I have it on. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
I think it can go up when you're talking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it would go up, but I would say this: a lot of people have a similar issue going into the doctor. Their blood pressure goes up, and so I kind of follow what I believe McDougall believes, that doing home blood pressure monitoring is the way to go and the way to adjust medication dosages. So if you've got a machine that's working adequately and you've had it tested, I think that's appropriate. And he doesn't recommend taking blood pressure very frequently, like maybe once a week or once every couple times a week, but not more than once a day. That's his thought.
Yeah. Oh, I have enjoyed the cuff monitor. The cuff monitor has been very accurate. I didn't know about them until I went to OMG for a checkup, and they're much better for those of us with fibromyalgia. And
Thank
very
you.
helpful, very helpful.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
We have another question. There's a little noise in the background, so I'm gonna see if I can figure out how to mute. But thanks for sharing that, Lynn.
Mhm.
And I am going to kind of mute a little bit. And then, Lisa, you asked about hibiscus tea and hypertension. So I want to share my screen because it's hard for me to go a session without playing at least one video for you all. So I hope you can all see the screen. And then I'm going to move this over and get on over to where we are here. And it's hibiscus tea versus plant-based diets for hypertension.
Still a big square in front of the screen, Charlie.
Is there?
Yeah.
So what happened
The latest
last
research
time?
pitted hibiscus against obesity, giving hibiscus to overweight individuals, and showed
big
reduced
black
body weight.
square?
But after 12 weeks on
Yeah.
hibiscus, they only lost like 3 pounds, and really only 1.5 pounds over placebo. Clearly, no
that
magic
better?
fix.
No, it's still
The
there.
purported cholesterol-lowering property of hibiscus
Yeah.
tea, it looked a bit more promising. Some older studies suggested as
there?
much as an 8%
Yep,
reduction
still there.
drinking 2 cups a day for a month.
It's that,
But when all the studies are put together, the results were pretty much a wash. This may be because only about 50% of people
All
respond at
right,
all
well,
to drinking
dang.
the equivalent of between 2 to 5 cups a day.
I don't
Though
know what to
those
do
that
about
do
that then.
respond may get a respectable 12 or so percent drop in cholesterol, but nothing like the 30% drop one can get within weeks of eating a healthy enough plant-based diet. High blood pressure is where
That's gone, now
hibiscus
it's
may
gone.
really shine, a disease
Now it's
affecting 1 billion
Okay.
people, killing millions. Up until 2010, there wasn't sufficient high-quality research out there to support the use of hibiscus tea to treat it, but there are now randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies where hibiscus tea is compared to artificially colored and flavored water that looks and tastes like hibiscus tea, and the tea did significantly better. We're still not sure why it works, but hibiscus does appear to boost nitric oxide production, which could help our arteries relax and dilate better. Regardless, an updated review acknowledged that the daily consumption of hibiscus tea may indeed significantly lower blood pressures in people with hypertension. But by how much? How does this drop in blood pressure compare to other interventions? Well, the premier clinical trial when it comes to comprehensive lifestyle modification for blood pressure control is the premier clinical trial. Realizing that 9 out of 10 Americans are going to develop hypertension, they randomized 800 men and women with high blood pressure into one of 3 groups. One was the control group, the so-called advice-only group, where patients were just told to lose weight, cut down on salt, increase exercise, and eat healthier. Here's a brochure. In the 2 behavioral intervention groups, they got serious. 18 face-to-face sessions, group meetings, food diaries, monitored physical activity, calorie and sodium intake. Now, one intervention group just concentrated on exercise, and the other one included exercise and diet. They pushed the DASH diet, high in fruits and vegetables, and low in full-fat dairy products and meat, and in 6 months achieved a 4.3-point drop in systolic blood pressure compared to control, slightly better than the lifestyle intervention without the diet. Now, a few points might not sound like a lot. That's like someone going from a blood pressure of 150 over 90 to a blood pressure of 146 over 90. But on a population scale, a 5-point drop in the total number could result in 14% fewer stroke deaths, 9% fewer fatal heart attacks, and 7% fewer deaths every year overall. But a cup of hibiscus tea with each meal didn't just lower blood pressure by 3, 4, 5 points, but by 7 points, 129 down to 122. And in fact, tested head-to-head against a leading blood pressure drug called captopril, 2 cups of strong hibiscus tea every morning, using a total of 5 tea bags for those 2 cups, was as effective in lowering blood pressure as a starting dose of 25 milligrams of captopril taken twice a day. So, as good as drugs, without the drug side effects, and better than diet and exercise? Well, the lifestyle interventions were pretty wimpy. As public health experts noted, the premier study was only asking for 30 minutes of exercise a day, whereas the World Health Organization is more like, an hour-a-day minimum. And diet-wise, the lower the animal fat intake and the more plant sources of protein the premier participants were eating, the better the diet appeared to work, which may explain why vegetarian diets appear to work even better. And the more plant-based, the lower the prevalence of hypertension. On the DASH diet, they were, they told to cut down on meat, but we're still eating meat every day, so would qualify as the non-vegetarians here in the Adventist 2 study, which looked at 89,000 Californians, and found that those who instead only ate meat on more like a weekly basis had 23% lower rates of high blood pressure. Cut out all meat except fish, and the rate is 38% lower. Cut out all meat, period, the vegetarians have less than half the rate, and the vegans, cutting out all animal protein and fat, appeared to have thrown 3/4 of their risk of this major killer out the window. One sees the same kind of stepwise drop in diabetes rates as one's diet gets more and more plant-based, and a drop in excess body weight such that only those eating completely plant-based diets fell into the ideal weight category. But could that be why those eating plant-based diets have such great blood pressure? Maybe it's just because they're so skinny on average. I've shown previously how those eating plant-based diets have just a fraction of the diabetes risk even at the same weight, even after controlling for BMI. But what about hypertension? The average American has what's called pre-hypertension, which means the top number of your blood pressure is between 120 and 139. Not yet hypertension, which starts at 140, but it means we may be well on our way. Compare that to the blood pressure of those eating whole food plant-based diets. Not 3 points lower, 4 points lower, or even 7 points lower, but 28 points lower. Now, but the group here eating the standard American diet was, on average, overweight, with a BMI over 26. Still better than most Americans, but while the vegans were a trim 21 over here, that's 36 pounds lighter. So maybe the only reason those eating meat, eggs, dairy, and processed junk had such higher blood pressure was because they were overweight. Maybe the diet per se had nothing to do with it. To solve that riddle, we would have to find a group still eating the standard American diet, but as slim as a vegan. To find a group that fit and trim, they had to use long-distance endurance athletes who ate the same crappy American diet, but ran an average of 48 miles a week for 21 years. They ran almost 2 marathons a week for 20 years. So if you do that, anyone can be slim as a vegan, no matter what they eat. So where did they fall on this graph? Both the vegans and the conventional diet group were sedentary, less than an hour of exercise a week. The endurance runners were here. So it appears if you run about 1,000 miles every year, you can start to rival some couch potato vegans. Doesn't mean you can't do both, but it may be easier to just eat plants.
So that video, I hope, answered the question of what about hibiscus tea, and I hope it encouraged those of you with high blood pressure to consider a whole food plant-based diet to control your blood pressure. And that doesn't mean just eating vegan. It means eating whole foods, plant foods, as they're grown in nature. It's a simple message. You're going to hear it over and over again. We're not policemen. We don't give tickets. You're not going to, be judged if you choose to eat animal products or processed foods. But if you want your best health, try to take the science into consideration here when you're reaching for a food, and as you're putting it in your mouth, you may ask yourself, is this going to help me reach my goal? And if it's not, you may choose something else.
About the hibiscus tea, about 3 years ago, my naturopath told me to drink 3 cups a day.
Yeah.
The whole top of my body swelled up. My arms swelled up, scared the shit out of me.
Well, I guess we all can react slightly different. Fortunately, the vast majority of people don't have that kind of reaction.
Well, I thought, how about the tincture instead of the tea?
Uh-huh.
What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. The study, I think, used the tea.
Yeah. 5 tea bags.
That's a lot.
You think?
But it lowered the blood pressure as much as captopril, and I used to write for a lot of captopril.
Oh, for crying out loud.
So, and Ken, you might have noticed that you're, really close to the normal range of blood pressure, and the medicine you're continuing to hang on to, maybe, like McDougall says, maybe continuing to promote it. So give that a little thought, talk it over with your doctor, and make a decision what you want to try.
And as I mentioned last week too, I'd seen that a lot with many of my patients where, they're really doing good with the diet and lifestyle change, and then their blood pressure creeps down a little bit, but I can't seem to get it down. It's in that 140 over 80, 140 over 90, 130s over 80s, and thinking, okay, well, it seems like it should be going lower, and then you take them off the blood pressure pill, and it goes lower. It goes down to like 110 over 70, 120 over 80 when you take them off the blood pressure medication. So there's something to be said for that. It doesn't happen all the time, but where it's kind of the body's response to the medication. It's trying to protect the blood pressure because you need to have a certain amount of perfusion to your organs and your brain and things like that. And so when you're on medication, you get that stimulus. It's constricting the vessels, trying to protect the blood pressure. But then when you relieve that remove that stimulus, then your blood pressure goes down to normal because your arteries are now relaxed and the blood flows just fine. Because that's a normal blood pressure on no medication. If you're healthy, if you have healthy blood vessels, then your blood pressure should be 110 over 70, 120 over 80 on no medication.
So I'm going back to the screen to see if anybody else might be the same be true for diabetic medication. I don't know. I do know that I wind up taking a lot of people off of their diabetic medicine unless they make and continue on with significant change to a totally whole food plant-based diet. They tend to kind of hang on to their medicine. So I don't know that the medicines would necessarily be raising your blood sugar.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I wouldn't expect the same scenario. But I often have to take people off of their diabetes medicines or lower their insulin so they don't get too low on their blood sugar, because as they make their diet changes, the blood pressure can really drop. So that's why you have to really be in close contact with your medical provider if you're going to make a big change when you're on blood pressure medicines, diabetes medications. It's important. Oh, someone had a question in there also about, can you get enough B vitamins from nutritional yeast? And I would say the answer is no to that.
Yeah. Yeah, you would have to be eating, I think it's 2 or 3 tablespoons at every meal or 3 times a day, depending on the brand of nutritional yeast. And it's something that I don't think any of us are going to be doing.
And it's mainly just the B12 we're talking about when it comes to B vitamins. You're getting plenty of other B vitamins from just eating whole plant foods, but B12 is the one exception there.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else?
Oh, Charlie, I saw Lisa put something up just a moment ago in chat about or she bought a bag of hibiscus leaves, I think it read, and she put it in water and put it in the refrigerator. I think that's a marvelous idea for summer, but I read it so quickly. I hope that's what she wrote. Did you happen to see that?
Yeah, it says, I bought a bag of dried hibiscus leaves, put some with water in the fridge, makes a great summer iced tea. Okay. So, yeah, that's a good thought. And you'll be, maybe treating some high blood pressure with that,
Yeah, it just-
that you won't ever develop because
Yeah.
you're eating whole food, plant-based, pretty much.
It
I
just sounds
suspect.
so refreshing. So thank you, Lisa, for putting that up. I like the idea.
Thanks for sharing. Okay. Let's see, anybody else have any thoughts or questions about high blood pressure or heart disease? Remember, during the first lecture, I want to do a brief review of the heart cardiovascular disease segment. This is part of the review session. And remember, there's only 2 studies in the world literature that have demonstrated reversal of the clogged coronary arteries, reversing heart disease. That's the studies by Dr. Dean Ornish in California and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic. And that's the reason I'm standing here talking with you, because I did this for my wife's sake. She had strong family history of heart trouble. And it's been 10 years that we've been doing this, and she has no evidence of heart disease, even though her dad died at age of 41. Her mom had a bypass graft surgery on her heart, and her brother had one. They were in their late 50s and early 60s. She had a really strong family history of heart disease, and she has none eating the way we're eating.
One thing I wanted to add to that too is I thought about this the class 2 weeks ago when we talked about heart disease. I didn't mention it at the time, because a lot of times I'll have patients or class attendees or whatever mention, well, why is there only these 2 studies? How come they're not still doing those kinds of studies? Well, it's like, well, they still do as far as observational studies, which is just like basically following people's diet and their outcomes going forward. But we always talk about the highest levels of evidence in medicine are randomized controlled trials, and those are randomized controlled trials. Dean Ornish is one, but the reason you're not going to get a new randomized controlled trial for heart disease reversal is because it wouldn't get past an ethics board any longer, because we already know it can reverse heart disease, and we already know that a standard American diet it actually promotes heart disease. And so you're not going to likely get too many randomized controlled trials going forward, because of it wouldn't get past an ethics board. Who's going to volunteer to do that when you already know that we already have good evidence that a whole food plant-based diet can reverse the #1 killer of heart disease? So that's just another thing I wanted to add to that.
And for the new members who might have seen others or are currently doing keto diet, paleo diet, the ketogenic diet has actually been shown in one study, a nuclear medicine study that showed that after a year on keto diet, that there was decreased blood flow to the heart compared to increased blood flow if you were on a whole plant-based diet. And there is a lesser life longevity associated with these other, with keto diets.
Correct.
Are we having fun or what? I mean, this is, important information, and a lot of people are, living under the myths that we have to eat animals for protein. We think that cow's milk does a body good with the milk mustache because of the way we've seen that advertisement, but it's myth. And so, if you go onto the archive session and check out Scott's myths, you'll see a number of myths that we still live under, at least our friends, family, relatives, and those around us, that are kind of like barriers to making this change.
Charlie?
Yes, Sherry.
Sherry, what about, like, when I joined you and, a few weeks ago, and I've started taking steps towards the whole plant diet. and I was a huge milk lover. So I went to oat milk. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely. Any plant milk is fine. That's what Dr. Esselstyn actually drinks with his oatmeal. He likes oat milk. I personally, I liked almond for years. Oat was okay, but I liked almond a little better. And then I switched over to soy because Dr. Michael Greger thinks that that's probably the healthiest choice. And I just changed my taste buds by eating it. So, but oat is definitely a satisfactory solution to the milk issue.
Good. One step in the right direction.
Very good for you.
Good job.
Thank you.
And again, there isn't an expectation that you're gonna today be eating the standard American diet and tomorrow you're gonna be whole food plant-based. Most people kind of gradually transition. They do sort of what you're doing. Well, I'm gonna try this substitution for a while, see how that works. And then once they are doing fine with that, they may go on to another area. And so doing little steps, gradual successes, it's a very acceptable way. But if you're looking, if you had like a 450 blood sugar, or if the doctor, you had chest pain, and the doctor said, you need to go in and get a coronary angiogram, we're going to put a stent in, or we're going to do a bypass, then I would say you may want to seriously consider doing some counseling with somebody to really make that shift over a couple day period of time, even though you may get some bloating or gas, but most people have time to gradually transition. Some people may want to do it more quickly, however.
Well, depending what your health goals are and your why for a change. And so that's something Charlie and I talk about in our introduction lectures from the beginning of January is, you got to find your why for making changes, because, ultimately nobody else's reasons, Charlie and I's reasons for you to change, that those aren't really that important. It's what your reasons are for change that's important. That's what's going to motivate you. It's joy of living, feeling good, feeling healthy, even more so than avoiding a heart attack or a stroke or diabetes or things like that. Those are things that Charlie and I as medical practitioners care a lot about, because we see the outcomes of thousands of patients over the years, how people's health declines and the outcomes from that. And so that's where our focus a lot of time is, because we have the science and the medical background, but really it's, feeling good, going out and, going to your daughter or granddaughter's wedding or graduation, or going on a hike or traveling to this country, or whatever it is you want to do, or making love with your spouse, or that you couldn't before, so it's whatever, it's pleasure and joy of living, that having purpose in your life, meaning in your life. Those are the things that are going to motivate you long term, even more so than avoiding a bad health outcome.
I'll second that. So the next one is do you recommend good fat? So, there are good fats, healthy fats, omega-3s. They are short chain and medium chain and long chain. And, if you're eating a whole food that are plants, is grown in nature, you're pretty much getting about 10% fat in your diet. Those are good fats by and large. The good fats would be the fats that are like in avocados or in olives or in nuts and seeds, flax seeds, for example. So you're going to get some fats in your diet. The standard American diet is 30 to 40, sometimes 50% fat. You don't really want to go there. You want to keep your fat intake to 10, 15%, maybe 20%. You know, it depends. Some people can add more fat if they're exercising more or whatever. They need to burn off a few more calories. But if you're trying to reverse heart disease, Dr. Esselstyn recommends a 10% or as close to that as possible. I don't think that I'm at 10%. I think I'm probably at 15%, maybe 15 to 20. I don't know, with the nuts that I might eat for the day. So we don't tell people specifically go out and eat fat. You want to do omega-3s, and you're going to get omega-3 fats from walnuts are a good source. The flax seeds, a tablespoon every day, you probably should have, maybe a quarter cup of nuts a day. Walnuts best source. But you also can get omega-3s from sea vegetable. When you eat sea vegetables like dulse or wakame, you get not only omega-3s, you may get a little iodine with that, which is one of the elements that you don't necessarily get from your other foods unless you're eating iodized salt. So this is, and then there's the discussion that maybe some people aren't able to produce moderate and long chain omega-3 fatty acids. And if you're not eating sea vegetables, then maybe you might need to supplement those fats. Those are individual discussions, and there is a fair amount of debate at this moment in time as to whether one should supplement or not. Some people choose to supplement to be on the safe side. Other people say, I'm feeling fine, I don't need to do that. I guess the totally plant-based people that I come into contact with, they look so healthy, they look so young, and they haven't been supplementing to date, but that seems to be the American way, is to supplement to cover all your bases. So I could see going either way. That was a long answer. Sorry about that, but Scott, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you summed it up. But if you're just so that's all the details about the good fats versus bad fats. But if you're just besides that, you don't need to worry about getting a certain percentage of carbohydrate, fat, or protein necessarily. Just you're going to get everything you need in the proper balance just by eating a whole food plant-based diet. So you're going to get the right amount of fat, the right amount of protein, the right amount of carbohydrate. Just it's the food that there's the package that's coming in is what's more important. But that's great information about the omega-3s and the good fats also. Other questions?
Let's see, from Evie and Doug, do you see that they want to transport us to their location, that their whole food plant-based provider is good, but they're not committed or fully supportive of decreasing medications? Again, for those of you who missed McDougall and Clapper, McDougall is a big fan of reducing medications, except for certain populations of people. So you may want to listen to that.
Yeah, a lot of the problem is that we are not really trained in medicine to de-prescribe medication so much. So it's kind of a new kind of thought process. It's like, whoa, well, if you're actually treating the causation of all these medical problems, then hey, that's a good problem to have, to de-prescribe. And so that's something, and I go to these nutrition conferences around the country, and that's becoming a very common lecture that I get when I go to these conferences by a pharmacist, actually, is proper de-prescribing, and that they're actually writing protocols for that. There's actually the residency programs that are popping up around the country for lifestyle medicine. They're starting to include that in the curriculum. So it's coming. It's just not, it takes a long time, unfortunately, from the time that doctors get trained to do a certain thing before it becomes kind of the common practice. So a lot of current practicing providers aren't going to be comfortable with it. So you'll be like, what? We were trained that once you get on blood pressure pills and diabetes pills and cholesterol pills, you're on them for life. And that's where the money is, because antibiotics and things like that, that's not where the money is, because you take it for a week and you're off. Where blood pressure pills, diabetes pills, cholesterol pills, you're going to be on them for years. That's where the money is. So that's not what it's designed.
Now, there is one more thought I have for Evie and Doug. If you're not really enamored by your healthcare provider, you can also get televisits these days. Dr. Clapper has a group. I don't know, Scott, do you know the name of that group at all? But
yeah, so plant-based telehealth. And there's like up to like 12, I think there's like 12 doctors on that group now. They've really grown, and they cover every state in the country. And it's plant-based telehealth.
And you could get their opinion. You would go through this, discuss the medicines, discuss the history. They're carrying their malpractice insurance to be able to give you advice. We're not carrying any malpractice insurance. We're trying to share the science with you, get you thinking about what you want to do. But if you're going to be making changes that are in contradiction to what your personal doctor's saying, you may want to get a second opinion from a telehealth plant-based provider. And we trust Dr. Clapper and his group. I do. Scott does, I believe, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Man, this has been fun. We have time for one or two more questions, and we'll go from there. Anybody, don't be shy. We're here. We'll be here again next week. I'm not sure what next week is on the schedule.
Gastrointestinal, GI. So key up all your videos for GI health.
Okay, we can do that. We've got the section there. Hey, Ken, go ahead. Go for it. But unmute yourself first before you kind of wear out the microphone speaker.
Okay.
There you go.
We touch on this once in a while, and it escapes me. There's something, some plant-based food that is hard on kidneys, gives kidney stones. I don't know. I just know we keep touching on it, and I'm not grasping it. So what is the thing that we probably eat, but we have to be careful because it might cause kidney problems?
Yeah, so spinach and chard have oxalates in them in high amounts. So you wouldn't be eating handfuls of spinach and Swiss chard.
Whoops.
And beet greens also, yeah.
And beet greens. So you could have a handful a day, but you don't want to have multiple handfuls. So rather than eating those in handfuls, transition a little bit more to arugula and kale and collard greens, because they don't have near the oxalates in them.
The other component too is calcium. Having excess calcium floating around in your bloodstream more than you need because of the very acidic standard American diet. Because of that, you basically lose muscle. There's a whole process, but you essentially have excess calcium floating around because of the acidity of the standard American diet. And that's the other component. So it's calcium oxalate is what most kidney stones are made of. And it's interesting because if you look at the studies, just going on a low oxalate diet does not prevent kidney stones. And a lot of the reason for that is because you also have the calcium is also part of the equation. So that's the other thing, if you're going from a standard American diet to a whole food plant-based diet, you're just by doing that, you're reducing your risk of kidney stones because you're not going to have all that excess calcium floating around because of the acidity of your previous diet. So you'll tend to have less kidney stones if you go on a whole food plant-based diet. But if you're on a whole food plant-based diet, you still had kidney stones, then you might have to really be careful about not getting too much oxalate, as Charlie mentioned.
So collards are high in calcium. Are they safe, or do we have to be careful how much we eat of those?
I wouldn't think that would be too much of a problem. Your
No.
excess calcium in your diet isn't usually a problem either. It's it's having, because your body's smart, so it'll get rid of the calcium it doesn't need, or it doesn't absorb what it doesn't need. It'll absorb what it needs, but the problem is if you're eating meat and cheese and eggs and dairy and other oils and processed foods, the standard American diet, if you're eating a lot of those foods, then you're gonna actually have excess calcium floating in your bloodstream, and that will combine with the oxalate and make the stones. And there's other types of stones too, but so you want the low acidity diet, the anti-inflammatory diet of a whole food plant-based diet, because then you won't have the excess calcium in as part of the equation.
And if you want further information, go to nutritionfacts.org, do a search for kidney stones, and he has several videos on foods and why to eat and how much you can eat and all sorts of stuff. So consider doing that, Ken. Evie, go ahead.
Okay, I just put it in the chat. I am whole food plant-based, and we're, doing that, but I had some yearly blood work done just for the routine physical, and they told me my potassium is too low.
Well, what is too low? Because there is a normal range, and there may be slightly below the normal range, or it may be way below the normal range. What is it?
I don't remember right off the top of my head right now. I just now popped into my head to ask the question. So,
if it's slightly below, like if the normal potassium level is 3.5 to 5.5 at your lab, and your value is 3.4, that could be just the reagents in there, the way they did the test. I'd repeat it before I would say I was low on potassium. Okay. If the value was 2.5 and you had a normal range of 3.5 to 5.5, then I would say, I wonder if my sodium is high, and could that be related to the cortisone? Do I have too much cortisone in my body where I'm holding on to sodium and depleting my body of potassium? So those are some things to think about. So if it's too low, really too low, before I would really go chasing after a cause, I would repeat it.
Okay.
Make sure there wasn't some lab error. And I must tell you, I've had a number of lab glitches. I guess I wouldn't call it an error. It's a glitch. It is an error, but the glitch was the potassium came back really high, and the patient on repeat had totally normal potassium. They had no signs or symptoms. So if you're otherwise feeling okay, then I wouldn't worry about it, but I would get it repeated.
Okay, thank you so much.
And the other really common cause of low potassium is medication. So if you're on a blood pressure pill, like a thiazide diuretic, or any kind of water pill, that will lower your potassium. So
yes,
medications can cause it too.
I was on hydrochlorothiazide, and my doctor just called and told me after this potassium, she said it's too low. She changed me to lisinopril, so she wants me to take that now.
Yeah. So that hydrochlorothiazide could be the sole cause of the low potassium, and then lisinopril can cause high potassium. So you have to be careful of that. So it's just that's where medications can be problematic, and that's why we want to try to not use medications if we don't have to, but sometimes we have to.
Exactly.
Yeah, and are you totally whole food plant-based at this time and still have your high blood pressure?
I would say maybe once a week I might have one thing that's outside of whole food plant-based, but everything else is within the realm. Just to, if we go to somebody's house and they've prepared a meal, and I will occasionally just go ahead and eat what they prepared, not to make it awkward.
So Dr. John McDougall, listening to him this last Sunday, he made a really good point. Rather than treating high blood pressure, we should be treating the cause. And the cause is arteries that are damaged. Our arteries get damaged, they get stiff, and it raises our blood pressure. So what does the pill do? It doesn't make the arteries less stiff. It can lower the blood pressure, but it's not treating the underlying cause. The underlying cause is caused by inflammation from the foods that we're eating. And so, it's one of those kind of things. You could, do an experiment on yourself, do some home blood pressure monitoring, do totally whole foods as they're grown in nature, do that for a solid 3 or 4 weeks. And if you find your blood pressure is normal, you may have healed your arteries and you may find that you don't have a high blood pressure problem. But this is a personal choice that you may want to explore.
Yeah, I don't want to take it, but they're, two of my doctors are just really pushing me towards, you have to have this, you need to do this, and
That's why a telehealth visit with a whole food plant-based provider like Clapper's Group might be really beneficial for you.
Thank you so much for that recommendation.
You're welcome. Well, what do you think, Scott?
Yeah, let's, if anyone has any other questions, I guess we can call it a night and pick back up next week.
It's been fun having you all here. And thank you for your questions. And we look forward to next week.
Thank you.
Hope to see some of you guys at the walk on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll be there. Where is
I'll
that
see you
at
there.
again, Scott? How
So
am I going to get there from here?
Yeah, so the Campbell Community Center. So just go, it's at the end of High Street. If you just stay on High Street, go across the train tracks from Fifth Street, where Fifth Street Market is.
Yep.
Or High Street goes right by Fifth Street Market. So you're going north on High Street, cross the tracks there right by Fifth Street Market. You just keep going straight. You go through a couple stop signs, and then on your right hand side you'll see the Campbell Community Center, and then the parking lot is all to the west of there. And
Is
then
that
that's
by
where the
3rd Street?
It's by Skinner's Butte.
right by Skinner's Butte, right?
Okay. All right, I'll find it. Now
Yeah,
I
there's a
know
map. There's a map. Sean has the map on the website. Shows where
Good.
it's at.
All right, thanks for the directions. I'll figure it out.
All right.
Lisa, we'll try to take some pictures for you. Okay, everybody. Take care until the next time.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.